I'm joined now in the studio by the international security analyst and former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson, and by the world affairs analyst and former commissioner in Delta State, Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us and for your patience. And let me come to you first, Captain Bish Johnson, because you served with the American Army and you've got a much better idea of security issues within the United States. What is your reaction to this attack?
Well, I think this attack was, quite, it was quite unfortunate. It elevated the sense of, gun violence that we've seen happen in the United States for quite some time, to the point that even a prominent presidential nominee like Donald Trump is not even safe. And so my reaction was much of a shock, because I know that the Secret Service as an organization or as an agency has served America very well. There had been issues, there had been assassinations in the history, but they learned from it and there were reforms. And from then on, that agency has served the American people well. So this particular incident came to me as a shock.
And Kenny Okolugbo, thank you for your patience there. Whilst assessing your reaction to this, both men effectively back on the campaign trail now. That's Biden and Trump, and the tone with which they both will campaign will be hugely scrutinized, won't it, as to whether they are able to take down the temperature in a race that up till now has been enormously divisive. Do you think that Donald Trump can tone down the rhetoric, given the kind of person that he is?
Well, I think the rhetorics have been on both sides. I was actually watching the live campaign in Butler, Pennsylvania, and it was like a shock for the people that watched it live. Nobody understood what was happening until that bullet rang through. But I think what this has done is that it has brought in a new awareness to what is happening in America. Americans have never been this divided. The bad blood, the hate. You can imagine in the debate, we talked about the debate in this studio. They didn't even exchange. They didn't shake hands, Biden and Trump. And for me, I see the rhetorics as being bad at both ends. But I think when you watch MSNBC and some of those other stations, they demonize Trump. They give this impression that if Trump takes over, he's going to abolish the Constitution, he's Hitler, he's an existential threat to democracy.
And let me just make clear to our audience.
Do you understand?
You've always been a supporter of Donald Trump.
I've never hidden the fact that
I've
never hidden the fact that I support Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least look at the facts and balance issues. But one thing Biden did was that Biden came up with a very strong statement. We must praise him for his speech. First, he had the first press conference where he said he was going to have an independent investigation into the attack. Then the second address from the Oval Office clearly addressed the fears of the rhetorics. That the rhetorics must have to be toned down at this material point in time. That even though they differ, they don't hate themselves to the extent of wanting. Thomas Crook is just a 20-year-old, for crying aloud. So if that kind of boy came so close to assassinating a 78-year-old man and a former president of America, that tells you that there's a whole lot of water has gone under the bridge. Don't also forget the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband. Don't forget they tried to kidnap Whitmer. That was headed by Adams. Eric. That was the person that headed the kidnap. Don't also forget the shooting of Scalise by John Hutchinson. And you remember he asked Duncan, the San Francisco congressman, who were the people in the baseball pitch in Virginia. Once he said they were Republicans, he opened fire on them. And so the history of violence in America has been one that has always been dictated by the rhetorics. And so it is a very important angle you looked at it from, that the rhetorics must have to tone down if they have to move forward.
Well, absolutely. It's not just me. Obviously, both leaders are saying that the rhetoric has to come down. But, Captain Johnson, you mentioned earlier the issue of the availability of guns in America. The country is absolutely awash with weapons.
Right.
Do you think this attack is likely to move the dial on access to not just guns, but specifically assault rifles, which is what was used? Or do you expect Republicans to continue to block the legislation, even though their own candidate has been attacked with an assault rifle?
I doubt that is ever going to happen. The attack on Donald Trump, could be a watershed moment, but we have had incidents in America that had passed what happened to Donald Trump. We've had a situation where government took assault rifles, went into schools and killed innocent children, went into clubs and killed innocent club goers. So I don't think that the Republicans will ever join the Democrats to at least limit access to put in some responsible and reasonable gun control, like you see in other advanced countries, like in the UK or in Canada, Japan, all those advanced societies. The Republicans are not going to do that because most Republicans are in the pocket of National Rifle Association of America, NRA. So the moment you come up with any regulation that is going to affect what they call their Second Amendment, they will primary you as a Republican candidate. The NRA will produce a primary contender to your position. And that is why Republicans don't touch it. It's a very, very toxic topic for them to go into. Let's understand how this Second Amendment thing we're talking about
Briefly,
came into effect. This is an amendment that came into effect when the United States had no military, they had no army. And so the ordinary citizens were the army that came out to defend America. So that was why they had that Second Amendment that no government shall interfere in the people's ability to bear arms. And that was when there were no machine guns. Now you have automatic rifles that can inject tens of hundreds of bullets in a matter of seconds. And so it makes sense that they have to go back and look at what is happening now and what the reason why this thing was even came into place in the first place.
It makes sense to you, but it clearly is not something, as you said, that they're going to touch. But let me come to you, Kenny Okolugbo. Let's kind of move away from the issue of gun control, because we'll have to.
I just chip
yeah, but very briefly.
Very briefly. You must remember that Donald Trump actually supported the ban for semi-automatic rifles, and he also banned the bomb stock. And it was only recently the Supreme Court of America now reinstated bomb stock. You know, you're in the army. You know what bomb stock is? It helps a smaller gun becomes an automatic gun. Donald Trump banned it. So it's not like Republicans, so to say, are all out for you to own guns in America. What they have said is that don't own semi-automatic weapons, but you must have guns to protect yourself because of crime.
Right. Okay, well, let me ask you this, because I was coming to you in any case. I wanted to get your thoughts on conspiracy theories that are swirling around at the moment. A lot of them, I mean, unfounded speculation around social media platforms and so on. I mean, the minute those shots rang out, there's been an absolute tidal wave of conspiracy theories, disinformation, hate speculation. I mean, the word staged was trending on X, Twitter, along with the suggestion that this was a setup. I mean, were you surprised by that attempt to undermine the reality of this assassination attempt?
I think that was very uncharitable. That actually shows how deeply divided they are in America. But you know, one of the things I liked was when the Department of Homeland Security, when Mayorkas actually owned up on CNN to say this was a failure of security. It's not about being staged. It's about the fact that what happened was that the Secret Service must own up to the responsibility of the security breach that happened, because they actually gave up security to the local police, and that 150 yards from where Thomas Crook shot those bullets, it cannot be said to be within the areas for the local police. That should have been within the. I mean,
we're going to have Bob Brooks in a minute.
That's great. Should have been condoned off. Should have been condoned off by the Secret Service. Remember what Corey Mills said, the congressman who is a sniper, Do you understand? You know, he's an army veteran. He said if he had closed his eyes, he would have gotten Trump from that distance. But that Trump was lucky that Thomas Crook, who is was not the professional.
We have to take a break, but let's bear in mind that the conspiracy theories are working on both sides, because some people suggested that there was some kind of plan here. Not all those sort of extraordinary but real images that subsequently came out from the attack were actually real, according to them. People suggesting that it was too perfect and it had to be a setup. But anyway, we'll get more assessment on that. So please stay with us. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Arise Prime Time. Plenty more still ahead. I'll be joined on the line from Washington by the U.S. military analyst Doug Brooks, founder of the security outfit, the International Stability Operations Association. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Anyegolo, and in a moment we'll be crossing over to the United States, the Washington area, to speak to the U.S. military analyst Doug Brooks, who is the founder of the security outfit, the International Stability Operations Association. But with me in the studio still, the international security analyst and former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson, and the world affairs analyst and former commissioner in Delta State, Kenny Okolugbo. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And before we went away, we were kind of looking at the conspiracy theories, but from the point of view of those who were saying that the attack was staged. You also had committed Trump supporters, so some of whom decided that this was an example of where the deep state or a shadowy cabal of people were deliberately trying to target Donald Trump, and they were suggesting that this was ordered by the CIA without any evidence, of course, to support their suggestions, that all this was reaching millions of people. In fact, with one of those talking about this deep state cabal getting nearly 5 million views on Twitter. So something of an earthquake of conspiracy theories, with different sides of the political spectrum hunkering down in what someone called their own echo chamber.
So, yeah. Of course, it's America. Conspiracy theory is not something that is new in America. There's conspiracy theory in everything that has to do with America, particularly the politics. But I have served in American institutions. I have confidence in American institutions. American institutions have always stand the test of time. They may have faced challenges here and there because we are all human. But I have confidence, whether it's the CIA or the FBI or the Secret Service, that they are competent in what they are doing. So I'm not going to be one of those conspiracy theorists. We'll have to wait to see. The president has already ordered for a full investigation, an independent investigation into what happened. So I will wait to hear from the FBI on the outcome of their investigation, which I know they will do a thorough job in trying to figure out what happened there. We'll allow the conspiracy theorists to do their whatever they're doing. But I've gone back and watched the video of what happened. I have to say that I was disappointed that the security perimeter that was established around the former president was that short. If I were to establish such a security perimeter, I will make sure that security perimeter is outside, particularly AR-15, effective or even maximum range. In this particular instance, the building, the rooftop where this lone gunman shot from was roughly about 30 to 40 meters away from where Mr. President was standing. And he has a direct line of sight. There were no obstacles or blockages in his view. So he could use that AR-15 to target and get the president. If he has a good marksmanship, he could have done that. So if I were the Secret Service, that security perimeter wouldn't have been that range where they established it. And all of those structures that we are in that area, I would have dominated and occupied all of them. I saw the video and I was somehow disappointed that something was missed here.
Well, obviously there's an investigation going
Sure,
on, and
sure.
oftentimes because the Secret Service often has a fairly tight budget.
Sure.
They work with local law enforcement.
Of course.
You know this a lot.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes,
so it's a
yes.
matter of who's got
Was
what
given to
area.
what, yes,
You see
yes.
what I mean? We'll have to wait for that investigation.
Yeah, sure. And it's not only Secret Service. They always have layers of security.
Yeah.
Mostly they use the local law enforcement within the closest perimeter, apart from a few Secret Service people who will also be there to actually, in the event there's anything, to ensure the safety of the
well,
former
when
president.
Doug Brooks joins us from Washington, which we hope will happen imminently, he'll be able to tell us a lot more because he's been very close. Okay, I'm actually told that he is ready now, so please stay with me. Let's continue that chat about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday. It's left many with serious questions about possible security failures that allowed it to happen. How was a gunman able to climb onto one of the only buildings in the vicinity, as Captain Bish Johnson was saying here, unseen by security staff? When eyewitnesses pointed him out to police ahead of the shooting, why wasn't he neutralized sooner? Was Mr. Trump evacuated from the scene fast enough? Well, the director of the Secret Service has been summoned to testify before a committee of lawmakers next week and will no doubt be expected to have answers to those questions. Meanwhile, as we mentioned, the FBI is leading the investigation into the actual attempted assassination. Well, to help us explore in more detail the security angle to that assassination attempt, I'm joined now on the line from Washington by the U.S. military analyst Doug Brooks, founder of the security outfit, the International Stability Operations Association. Mr. Brooks, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm sorry we lost you for a minute there. I think you timed out and we had to time you back in. So my apologies if that caused you a bit of discomfort. But to what extent was there a failure of security at that Pennsylvania rally? Or is it in fact impossible to ensure complete safety at such big public events?
Well, there's still a lot of investigation going on just now on exactly this. There's a lot of speculation that, essentially this was the one building that was nearby that somebody could actually get a line of sight on the podium. So it should have been paid attention to more. There's also been some claims that, in fact, the Secret Service had seen this person climbing on the roof and were starting to do something about it. And there had been conflicting orders as to what they should do about it. So we're seeing some more camera video come out from people who were at the event, showing this person climbing on the roof and in fact, being armed. So this, I'm sure, will come out in the near future. It's also becoming a political issue, though. The Republicans are claiming that the Secret Service is plagued by DEI, essentially diversity requirements. So they're saying that the woman who's in charge of the Secret Service was put there because she's a woman and not because she knew what she was doing. And so this has led to the weaknesses. And this has been a theme of the Republican Party under Trump. So there's a lot of issues going on. But hopefully we'll find out more in the near future.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, just from your experience as a security expert and a military sort of analyst, what sort of circumference around the podium at an event like that should they have made secure? Because I imagine that you'd need to do several rings of security. For instance, I'm told by the experts that the maximum range of a pistol would be about 50 yards, and then for an AR-15 rifle, which was used by the attacker, would be about 600 yard or sort of maximum effective range. So shouldn't they have tried to see what is there and what a shooter could get upon that would allow them to reach reach to the stage with such a weapon? And the attacker, I understand, was only 130 yards away.
Yeah, you would think. I'm not an expert on the ranges and so on. I do know that the rifles are often engaged, military rifles, to 400 yards is sort of where you expect to be able to hit something. So this range of 130 yards was very short range, really. And then I guess we can only be grateful that the person shooting it was a nervous kid, and probably that's why Trump was not hit today or hit the other day. But yeah, it would be a concern, and you think this, especially in this particular instance, sort of the one rooftop nearby that wasn't being guarded, is the one where this guy was able to get up on top of. So very unusual.
Yes, and I mean, to make matters worse, it seems as if law enforcement wasn't even aware that the shooter had got on top of that building, and it seemed like a lifetime before law enforcement responded to the attacker.
Yeah, so there was bystanders literally pointing him out to the police. The police, of course, you have several different departments and capabilities that are at these events. Of course, you have Secret Service sort of doing the immediate security and helping to, I guess, coordinate all the other security. But you have a lot of local police of different capabilities and roles, and sometimes they're bringing in police from around the state and so on, state police and whatever. So it's a hodgepodge of different police forces that all have to be coordinated, and generally it works pretty well, I guess. But clearly there's a gap here.
And I mean, have you got an opinion about whether Donald Trump had the right size of security detail for an ex-president?
Yeah, I would think he does. He's a very controversial character in the United States, and we've had crazies and we've had lone gunmen in the past who have targeted all our presidents and potential presidents. So it's always a concern, and they, usually they're able to head these things off before it gets to the point where somebody actually takes a shot. Usually, if you have more than one person involved, you can detect that there's some sort of conspiracy or something like this. In this case, you can't stop everybody. And especially if it's a lone gunman who's not communicating with other people about what their plans are. And I think, as was discussed earlier, I caught a bit of the conversation. The fact is they do have AR-15s that are available. That's basically the civilian version of the M16. It's semi-automatic, not fully automatic, but it's a very capable military weapon with a high-velocity bullet. And unfortunately, especially Trump's party, the Republicans have been keen on keeping these weapons out there. So when you're protecting these venues, you have to be aware that you have some really, really capable weapons that have long ranges, and it's almost impossible to prevent everybody from doing these sorts of things.
Well, absolutely. And, well, of course, that was an event taking place in Pennsylvania. We've got now Milwaukee, where the Republican convention is getting underway. I mean, security there must be much tighter than usual after that bullet that nearly took Donald Trump's life.
Well, it's interesting. The Republican, they have a woman who's in charge of their security at the convention as well, and she says the security is not being changed, that they have adequate security. It is an indoor event, so it's much easier to control who's going in there. Yeah, I mean, it is sort of interesting. It's the other thing that's kind of going on as a result of all this is, I think you guys talked a little bit about the conspiracy theories that are flying around, and it's getting Trump's party and Trump's supporters are particularly gullible, I think, or prone to conspiracy theories. So, for example, one of the theories is that Trump was not actually hit with a bullet; he was hit with flying glass from his teleprompters, and the bullet hit the teleprompter and the glass hit his ear, which seems to make some sense. But nevertheless, this has become a huge issue among the conspiracy theorists within the Republican Party. There are also, of course, theories flying around that Joe Biden is behind this, or that that this was planned ahead. The Democrats, some crazy Democrats, are saying this stuff. The conspiracy theories are flying off the wall now, and with social media the way it is these days, it means this is something that's going to go on for decades, where people speculate about what was behind this. It really does look like a lone gunman. He was a registered Republican of all things, but maybe we'll never really know what his motivations were.
Well, absolutely. Doug, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us there, and I apologize for the delay in getting you on air. Doug Brooks is a U.S. military analyst, and he's the founder of the security outfit, the International Stability Operations Association, and he was talking to me there on the line from Washington. And of course, my two other guests are still with me in the studio. The international security analyst and former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson, and the world affairs analyst and former commissioner in Delta State, Kenny Okolugbo. And just to remind our audience of that news that we got earlier, we mentioned that at the outset, Donald Trump announcing J.D. Vance as his running mate. And he is a senator from Ohio. And we've got just a few minutes left on the program, and I thank both of you very much indeed for sharing your assessments with us. But how do you think this attempted assassination might change the U.S. presidential election campaign going forward?
Don't forget that when they tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan, although he was a sitting president in 1981, that gave him momentum, and he was able to win about 49 states. So even though I see Donald Trump has been leading in most of the swing states, I see this assassination attempt to boost more support for him, especially for those Republicans who have felt that Donald Trump has been a bit on the extreme. This might, force them to come vote, the ones that wanted to sit back and said they didn't want to vote. And don't forget that the Project 2025 that Donald Trump has disassociated himself from, basically, he says being propagated by some of his compatriots quite all right, but their views are quite to the extreme. Donald Trump has taken a middle ground. On abortion, he now thinks that the states should handle abortion. He doesn't think there should be a federal ban on abortion, which was one of the major cardinal principles of the Republican Party. And on certain other grounds, like even LGBT, which the Republican Party abhors, Donald Trump is a bit silent on it now. So you can see that there is a drive for both parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, to win these elections. But I don't think there should be a drive at all costs. Especially with today's dismissal of the document case by George Cannon. That's another booster for him, because that would mean that it will have implications on the Washington case under the judge there, Chonkin. Chonkin might also have no choice but to maybe suspend the case in Washington until the appeal court rules.
Well, we'll have to see how that goes. But I mean, the case you're talking about is a judge in Florida dismissing that criminal case against Donald Trump, which accused him of holding on to classified documents.
That's what I talked about.
Bish, we've got like literally a couple of minutes before we have to go. Your final thoughts.
Well, don't forget, in the U.S. judicial system, there's always that right to appeal. This is a lower court.
Well, the government already said they
are going to appeal. Yeah. Now, as far as how this thing is going to impact this election, look, in politics, 24 hours is eternity. And I'm telling you right now that we are 4 months away from this election. What is happening right now, in the next 1 or 2 weeks, once the media focuses on something else, what happened 2 days ago will be forgotten. The Donald Trump may benefit from it temporarily and in the short term through fundraising, but in the long run, all of these things will become history, and Americans will move on to other issues that are very important to them. On the issue of abortion, Donald Trump can change his position as much as he wants to, but don't forget that the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade were justices that were appointed by Donald J. Trump. So he is still in that quagmire, whether he changes his position or not.
Okay. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much indeed. The U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson, who's an international security analyst, the world affairs analyst, and former commissioner in Delta State, Kenny Okolugbo, and earlier, of course, Ambassador Earl Anthony Wayne, who was Assistant Secretary of State in the U.S., and the U.S. military analyst, Doug Brooks. All of you, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week, tomorrow actually, from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Washington. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.